Settle in and get comfortable. This is a calm, slow story meant for bedtime. It will move at an easy pace, with clear details and gentle turns. There are no sudden shocks. Let the mind drift while the scenes unfold. If the eyes get heavy, that's fine. The story will carry the rest. There is a legend told in cities and small towns across Japan. It is simple on the surface, but it sticks in the head. People say a woman with long hair appears late at night on quiet streets. She wears a light coat and a medical mask that covers the lower half of her face. She steps out from a shadowed corner or from behind a utility pole when someone passes by alone. In a soft voice, she asks, "Am I pretty?" Most people answer yes, because it seems polite. Then she slides down the mask and shows a mouth cut open from ear to ear. She asks again, "How about now?" What happens after that depends on who is telling the story. Some insist the only way out is to confuse her with an answer like "you're average," or by tossing her a sweet or piece of candy. Others say running won't help because she is fast when unseen. The safest choice in most versions is to avoid quiet streets, especially if a light coat and a mask wait in the corner of the eye. That is the outline almost everyone knows. But there is a longer version that blends the legend with a single person's experience. It does not claim to be proof. It is told, calmly, as a night in a city where the sidewalks are narrow and the streetlights hum. On a damp spring evening, a university student named Emma left a study session later than planned. The rain had already passed. The streets were not flooded, but everything was damp. The crosswalk stripes, the backs of benches, the leaves under the low streetlights. Emma's route to her small apartment usually took 20 minutes. She would follow the main road near the station, pass 2 convenience stores, then cut down a side street to save a few minutes. She messaged a friend that she was heading out, tucked her phone away, and started walking. The station area was still a little busy, but a block away the noise thinned. The air smelled like wet concrete and fresh laundry venting from a building. Her shoes made a soft squeak with each step. The clock on her phone read 11:38 p.m. To save time, she took the narrow lane behind the pharmacy. It was not truly a back alley, just a service street between buildings. A vending machine glowed at one end. A motorbike with a cover slept near a fence. One of the streetlights in the middle flickered, not fully broken, not fully on. Emma walked at a steady pace, eyes forward, backpack straps pulled tight so they would not slide. Halfway down the lane, she heard an extra step that did not belong to her. It was a single quick tap on the wet pavement, like a heel landing after a pause. She did not look back. She kept her breathing even. The sound did not repeat. She passed the flickering lamp and reached the wider street on the other side. The wider street was empty in a quiet way. The buildings were medium height, most windows dark, a few pale screens glowing. A cat sat under a bicycle and watched her. In front of a small office, a sign leaned on a stand that said closed in 4 languages. Emma turned toward her block and kept going. At the next corner, she saw someone standing near the base of a utility pole. Not blocking the sidewalk, just there. A woman in a beige coat with the collar laid flat. Long dark hair, plain shoulder bag. A white mask across the face. The mask did not look new, but it was not dirty either. The woman did not seem drunk or in trouble. She stood with her hands folded over the bag strap, still and neat. Emma felt that small alert feeling the body sends when something is unexpected. Not fear, not yet. Just alert. She shifted slightly to give space as she passed. As she drew even with the woman, a voice came, soft and gentle. "Am I pretty?" Emma stopped. It would have been rude to ignore a direct question. She turned a little toward the woman, keeping a meter of space. The eyes above the mask were calm and open. They did not flick around. They did not look angry. They looked like eyes that had practiced looking ordinary. Emma said, "Yes." The woman tilted her head slightly, as if testing whether the answer was honest or automatic. Then, with one slow motion, she lifted the mask down to her chin. The mouth was wrong. At a glance, it looked like a wide smile, but the shape was not natural. The skin on both sides was pulled into thin curves that reached toward the ears. The upper and lower lips did not meet in a normal line, they were cut. The edges were healed in some spots and raw in others, as if time did not move the same way at either end of the cut. It was not a fresh wound. It was not a clean scar. It was like someone had tried to erase a mouth and then draw it back too wide. The woman asked, "How about now?" There was no blood dripping. There were no sound effects. Just the open street, the hum of a distant sign, and the question. Emma's mind flipped through possible answers. The legend flashed up. Be vague, distract her, throw candy, say average, ask for time, ask for directions. But all those tricks came to mind at once, and none of them felt right. The woman did not look angry or ready to lunge. She looked like a person who needed an answer to move on. Emma said, "I don't know." The words left her mouth before she chose them. They were honest. She did not know what to say. The face in front of her was both beautiful and damaged. The question itself was a trap. The woman blinked once, slowly, as if tasting the reply. Then she did something small but strange. She pulled the mask back up, not to cover fully, but to rest lightly under the lower lip, like someone who was tired of holding it. "Thank you," the woman said, voice still soft. "Most people pretend." She stepped aside, giving Emma a clear path. Emma nodded and walked on. She did not run. She did not look back right away. She kept her pace steady for half a block. When she reached the crosswalk, she glanced over her shoulder. The woman was still near the pole, adjusting the mask, then turning her face slightly toward the street as if checking whether the next person coming would ask for directions. Emma crossed and continued home. The streets were normal again, a delivery truck easing around a corner, distant music from a second-floor bar, the clean smell of a laundromat vent. At her apartment door, she touched the key to the lock. Her hand was steady. Inside, she did what most people do when they have felt something strange but not dangerous. She put down her bag, washed her hands, set water to boil for tea, and tried not to make a big story out of it in her head. The phone buzzed. Her friend asked if she got home safe. Emma typed back, "Yes." Weird question on the way, but home now. A reply came, "Weird question?" Emma wrote, "A woman asked if she was pretty. Just odd." The friend sent a laughing emoji and a sticker of a cartoon with a big grin. Emma smiled at the screen and set it face down. She carried her tea to the small table by the window. The blinds were half closed. She could see slivers of the opposite building and the thin line of the sky. The clock on the stove said 12:07 a.m. She sipped the tea, opened a textbook out of habit, and tried to read a paragraph. The words did not stick. Her mind replayed the image of the too-wide smile in the middle of a normal street. Not with fear, but with a steady curiosity. The legend had always sounded like a jump scare. In person, if that was the right word, it felt like a question no one could answer well. She put the book away. Before bed, she did one more normal thing. She checked the peephole. The hallway was empty, beige walls, quiet. She set an alarm, turned off the main light, left the small desk lamp on the lowest setting, and lay down. Sleep came in parts. The first part was a light doze. In that doze, her mind placed her back on the street under the flickering lamp. The second part was deeper. In that deeper part, she stood in her apartment, looking at the door, while someone on the other side asked a simple question through the wood. The voice was gentle. The question was the same. Am I pretty? The door had no mouth, so the mind supplied one, a shadow smile, drawn long across the grain. She woke briefly, rolled to the other side, and pulled the blanket higher. The desk lamp's glow drew a narrow stripe across the closet door. The apartment building creaked in a normal way as it settled. A car passed outside with a soft tire hiss. Her breathing matched the passing sound and slowed. When morning came, the room felt ordinary again. On the way to campus, she took the main road. She did not avoid where she had walked the night before, but she chose the path with more people. At a crosswalk, she saw a line of students, office workers, and an older man walking a small dog in a vest. The dog's nails clicked on the pavement. A bus pulled up inside. Life looked like life again. At lunch, her friend asked about the weird question. Emma shrugged and said, "Probably just a person playing a prank." The friend nodded and told a story about a neighbor who liked to ask for directions to a place only 2 blocks away. They laughed. The subject changed to an exam. By evening, it was almost a normal day. 2 nights later, on a similar schedule, Emma finished late again. This time she promised herself she would stick to the main road. She left the station, passed the same convenience stores, and stayed near the brighter lights. A slight breeze moved the flags outside a ramen shop. A bicycle bell rang once, not urgent, just a friendly ring before a turn. As she reached the corner near the utility pole, she slowed. Across the street, not in the same spot but not far, stood a woman in a beige coat. The posture was similar. The hair was similar. The mask was in place. Emma could not be sure it was the same person, but the shape of the scene matched like a memory lining up with real life. The signal changed. Emma crossed with 2 other people. This time, the woman did not speak to her. She was looking down into her bag, as if checking a phone or a small mirror. Emma passed and kept going. The woman did not follow. The street behind stayed the same size in the sound of footsteps. Hers, the others, nothing added. At home, Emma locked the door and stood still for a moment. The legend paints the woman as a hunter who steps out at random. But what if the question is the point? What if the question is a test of how people think when they are surprised? Maybe the answer is not about beauty. Maybe it is about whether a person can pause and consider something without defaulting to what they think they should say. That week, Emma decided to share the experience in a small way. She posted a short note on a campus message board under a general odd things in town thread. Anyone ever meet someone at night who asks, "Am I pretty?" Not pranking, just curious. Some replies were jokes. A few people referenced the legend. One person wrote a longer comment. "My cousin said this happened near our place one night." She answered, "I'm not sure." The woman laughed like a normal person and said, "Me neither." Then they both went on their way. The thread turned into a list of quiet encounters from different corners of the city. A delivery worker wrote about seeing a figure outside a closed shop, not moving, just looking at their reflection in the shutter. A middle-aged man described a masked woman asking directions to a hospital that had moved years ago. A grandmother posted that when she was young, her mother told her to carry peppermints at night because some people stop asking questions if you offer something small and kind. None of this proved the legend. It did something else. It made the legend feel close, like a person rather than a monster in a story. The edges became softer. The middle still held a sharp shape, but it no longer stabbed at the mind. A month passed. The season edged toward summer. People wore lighter jackets or none at all. Masks still appeared on faces here and there out of habit. Emma took different routes home depending on errands or time of day. Sometimes she thought of the woman, sometimes she did not for a week at a time. One late evening, at the end of a rain that left the air fresh and quiet, Emma stood under a canopy outside a shop to check her phone. The street had that clean look after a wash. Across from her, a young couple held hands and shared a small umbrella. A taxi slowed for a turn. A convenience store clerk stacked bottled tea in a display by the door. From the left, footsteps approached. A woman in a beige coat took shelter at the other end of the canopy, leaving space between them. She did not look over right away. She adjusted the strap on her bag and checked something small in her hand, a folded tissue, a lipstick, a compact mirror. Then she turned slightly. Her eyes were calm, not staring. She seemed to choose whether to speak. She said, "Am I pretty?" The voice was familiar. Not a voice attached to a name, just familiar in the way a street feels familiar after walking it twice. Emma met her eyes, gave a small nod, and said, "You look like you." "That's enough." The woman paused. Her shoulders lowered by a small amount, as if something heavy had been set down. She did not pull down the mask this time. She said, "All right," in a tone that sounded like acceptance rather than approval seeking. She stepped back out into the light rain and walked away at an easy pace. The couple across the street lifted their umbrella higher and crossed against a flashing signal. The taxi completed its turn. The convenience store clerk finished the display and rolled the empty crate inside. That was the last direct moment. After that, The legend returned to being a story told by others, with details swapped like recipes. But once a person has had even a quiet version of an encounter, the way they walk at night changes in a small way. Not with fear, just with attention. The brain sorts every motion on a late street, a coat on a rack through a window that looks like a person for a second, a parking meter leaning like a shoulder, a poster with a face half torn that looks like someone watching. The habit of attention can be calming. It keeps the mind in the present, which is helpful before sleep. There are many theories about Kuchisake Onna. Some say she is the spirit of a wronged person, doomed to ask the same question forever. Some say she is a warning about appearances and the pressure to be pleasing. Some say she is a mirror held up to whoever passes by, reflecting back the way they answer uncomfortable questions under stress. The legend stays because the question stays. It is not about right or wrong. It is about what people do when kindness, honesty, fear, and habit collide. For bedtime, it helps to keep a few things simple. Streets are just streets. Masks are common in cities. Questions are only questions until we decide what weight to give them. If a calm voice in a quiet place ever asks for an opinion, it is fine to say, "I don't know." Honesty is also a way through. If the mind wants a rule, here is one offered by people who like practical answers. Carry a small candy or mint when walking alone at night. If someone seems to need a moment more than a judgment, offer the sweet and keep your voice gentle. In a story, it buys time. In real life, it is just a kind thing to do. Kindness is not a trick. It is a clear path. Now the story slows further. The apartment lights are low. The room is the same as always, a familiar bed, the soft shape of curtains, a door that has stayed closed many nights in a row. Outside, the city moves like a tide far from shore there, but not loud. If any footsteps pass, they belong to neighbors going about their lives. If any questions hang in the air, they can wait until morning. The mind can place them on a shelf and pick them up tomorrow with fresh eyes. The legend will still exist then. It has existed for decades and will likely exist for decades more, which means it does not need to be solved tonight. Stories like this are not puzzles to crack. They are weather, sometimes present, sometimes not, always changing shape as people retell them. Listening is enough. As the breathing slows, picture the simple parts. A streetlight reflected in a puddle, a vending machine glowing at the end of a lane, the steady feel of a key turning in a lock, the sound of water heating for tea, a message from a friend asking if everything is okay. These are real, solid details. They frame a day. They also frame a night. And if, somewhere in the drift before sleep, a soft voice in a memory asks, "Am I pretty?" the answer does not have to be clever or brave. It can be calm and simple. Or even silence, because silence at bedtime is not rudeness, it is rest. Let the shoulders loosen. Let the jaw unclench. Feel the pillow support the head. The room remains ordinary and safe. The legend stays in the world of stories, where it belongs. If the eyes close now, the story will keep watch for a while, and then it will fade, like a street after rain when the pavement dries and the last puddle reflects the sky only for a moment more. The school bathrooms were cleaned, the halls were quiet, and the building made its small settling sounds. Night classes had ended. A few lights still glowed over the stairwells and the front entrance. Janitors stacked mops and buckets in the supply room and checked their lists. Outside, the parking lot was a dark grid with a few leftover cars. Inside, a security guard walked a slow loop and listened for anything out of the ordinary. This legend lives in places like this. Tiled rooms with echoing drains and stalls with doors that latch. It repeats in different cities with small changes, but the core stays the same. In an empty bathroom, a voice asks a simple question. The trick is that both answers are wrong. There is a quiet story from a high school where the top floor had an old restroom that students avoided at night. It wasn't because of the plumbing, nothing was broken. The taps worked. The sinks drained. The lights were a little dimmer than the others, and the mirrors had a few scratches, but nothing extreme. The problem, according to rumor, was an unseen person who offered a choice, red paper or blue paper. Those who chose red would find themselves covered in something red. Those who chose blue would be drained until they turned blue. The smart thing, the kid said, was to ask for a different color or to ignore the voice and leave. A student named Rena stayed late one evening to finish a project in the art room. She liked the top floor at night. No one cut across the corridor to bother her, and the vending machine near the stairs was always stocked. When she finally wrapped up, she cleaned her brushes, wiped the table, and taped a note to her canvas to keep others from moving it. She checked the time. It was later than she planned, but not so late she would be locked in. Her bag was heavy with sketchbooks, but she didn't mind. She took a long drink of water and headed down the hall. Halfway to the stairwell, she decided to use the restroom so she wouldn't have to stop at the station. The next floor down had a newer bathroom, but this one was closer. She pushed the door open and listened. No voices. No running water. Just the small hum of the light and the hollow sound rooms get when they're all tile and no people. She went to the third stall from the end, the one she always used when she happened to be up here. The door latch was firm. The paper roll wasn't empty. The little hook on the back of the door looked like it would hold her bag. She set the bag on the hook and sat. After a moment, the air in the room felt cooler by a small margin. It wasn't a draft, just the sense that the room's temperature shifted down 1 degree. From the empty stall to her left, a voice spoke, low but clear. Red paper, or blue paper? Rena froze for a second. The voice did not sound like a friend doing a prank. It was even, patient, as if the person had asked this many times. She remembered the legend, of course. Everyone knew it. The obvious rule was to say neither, or to ask for a different color. But standing rules can feel thin when there is a real voice in the next stall. She didn't answer right away. The hook creaked slightly as her bag shifted. She looked at the gap under the divider. She saw only the shadow of the next stall's panel on the tile floor. No shoes. No hem of a coat. No legs. The voice repeated, same tone. Red paper, or blue paper? Rena stayed still. She didn't want to play along. She also didn't want to provoke anything. She said, as neutrally as possible, no paper. The voice was quiet for a beat, as if it were checking a list. Then it asked, are you sure? Rena said, yes. The room held its breath for a second. Then the light in the far corner flickered once and steadied. The cool feeling lifted. The weight in the room left like a person stepping back. She finished quickly, washed her hands, and left without running. In the hall, everything felt normal again. The squeak of her shoes, the familiar posters on the wall for upcoming events, the vending machine's soft chime as it cycled. She went down the stairs, waved to the security guard, and walked into the night. That could have been the end. But stories like these have a way of asking the same question more than once. 2 days later, the art teacher asked for help moving large canvases from the storage room near that same restroom. Rena and another student, Ken, volunteered. They hauled the canvases down the hall, set them against the wall by the studio, and went back for more. On the second trip, Ken said he needed the restroom and pushed the door open. Rena followed, planning to wash paint off her fingers at the sink. Ken took the last stall. Rena stood at the sink, turned the tap, and rubbed her fingers under the water. Behind her, the mirrors reflected the door, the row of stalls, and the bright rectangle of the hallway outside. She looked at her reflection's hands because she did not want to stare at the stalls like someone in a movie waiting for something. Water ran. Soap slid off her skin. She reached for a paper towel. The dispenser clicked and fed out a fresh sheet. Then the voice came again, from the same direction, same pitch, same patient tone. Red paper, or blue paper? Rena's shoulders tightened, but she kept her face still. In the mirror, she saw the stall doors like a line. Ken said, with his usual fearless humor, neither. I'm all set. He laughed, the way people laugh when they think they can handle anything. The voice said, choose. Ken went quiet for a second. Maybe he thought it was a joke. Maybe he wanted to prove he wasn't nervous. He said, blue. The choice left his mouth like he was saying the name of a team he didn't care about. The silence that followed felt thick, like the air went from soft to heavy in a single second. The light buzz rose by a fraction. Water still ran in the sink. Rena dried her hands as calmly as she could and turned the tap off. From the last stall came a soft exhale. Not Ken's usual sound. It had no edge. It slid out like air leaving a bag. Rena spoke up, keeping her voice steady. "Ken," he answered from behind the door, but the voice was thinner than usual. "I'm fine." He did not sound fine. Rena moved one step closer to the stalls but stayed at the end of the row. "Open the door," she said. "Let's go. We still have 2 canvases." The lock slid. The door opened a few inches. Ken stood there, pale. His lips looked as if they had lost color. His eyes were focused but a little unfocused at the edges, like someone standing up too fast. He grabbed the door frame with one hand. "I feel weird," he said. "Like I held my breath too long." He took a slow breath. The color started to return to his face. He rubbed his hands together, as if warming them. Rena glanced into the stall. Nothing looked odd. No one else was there. No coat hem, no shoes. Just tile, a clean toilet, a roll of paper. She didn't want to check the stall next to it. She didn't want to see a shadow where none should be. She said, "Let's go." They left together. In the hall, Ken's normal color came back. He made a joke about ghosts needing better hobbies. Rena smiled, but inside she decided she was done with that restroom. The storage room had a door on the other side, and from then on, she used that route. Rumors spread in a high school on their own. No one kept a perfect schedule of who told who. Someone heard from someone that on the top floor a student was asked to choose between red and blue and felt faint afterward. That turned into "Don't say blue, it makes you stop breathing," and "Don't say red, it'll make your nose bleed forever," and a dozen small changes. Teachers ignored it. The security guard said students should not be on that floor late anyway. The janitor said the lights had been replaced and the wiring was fine. The students added one more layer to the building in their minds. A regular floor with a not quite regular bathroom. A week later, an exchange student named Marie joined Rena's group for a history project. Marie had transferred midterm and still learned the layout of the building. After a study session in the library, she asked where the nearest restroom was. Rena started to tell her about the one on the first floor but then changed her mind. She decided information was better than avoidance. She said, "There's one around the corner. If you go in and someone asks you to choose red or blue paper, just say you don't need any. It's a dumb legend." Marie looked at her with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Someone will ask." Rena said, "Probably not. But if they do, ignore it." She added, "If you hear it a second time, just leave. Don't play around." Marie nodded, still curious. She went. Rena stayed in the library and packed her bag slowly, listening. She told herself this was silly and then stayed anyway. Marie returned a few minutes later with her eyebrows slightly raised. "Your school is weird," she said, but without fear. Rena asked what happened. Marie said a quiet voice asked her the question. She did not answer. It asked again. She left. "It felt like a quiz I hadn't studied for," Marie said. "But the test wasn't about knowledge. It was about making me choose something dumb." Rena felt like someone had confirmed the rules of a game that no one wanted to play. She said, "That's exactly it." They walked out together in the late afternoon. It was still bright outside. It felt almost funny to discuss a bathroom ghost in sunshine with cars going by and a delivery truck backing up to the cafeteria. Legends look smaller in daylight. Night gives them shoulders. Later in the term, the school hosted an evening event. Parents and students came for a cultural fair with food booths, small performances, and displays of student work. The building felt friendlier than on a normal night. Music echoed down stairwells. The smell of grilled food mixed with the smell of floor cleaner. A teacher opened the top floor temporarily for a small art gallery in the hall. Visitors moved slowly past the canvases and photographs, speaking quietly, the way people do in galleries even when it's a school display. Rena stood by her work and explained her process to a couple of parents with polite interest. Ken cracked jokes nearby and tried to get people to vote for his piece in a friendly poll. Marie took photos and slid comment cards under the frames of artwork she liked. The top floor did not feel like the top floor. The bathroom door stayed closed and ordinary. Near the end of the night, when things were winding down, the security guard did a final pass. He waved up the hall and reminded everyone to start packing. As people rounded one corner, a younger sibling of a student tugged at her mother's sleeve and said she needed the bathroom. The mother pointed to the door on the top floor without thinking. The little girl ran ahead. Rena saw this happen. A small knot formed in her chest, the kind that says, "Someone should keep an eye on that." She followed at a walk, not wanting to make it a big deal. She waited by the bathroom door and listened. Kids take a while. She heard a faucet turn, then off, then on again. She heard the little girl sing a line of a song softly to herself about washing hands. Everything was normal. Then, very faint, with the door in between, she thought she heard the quiet voice ask its question. Not loud, not menacing, just the same careful words. Rena's hand moved to the door handle. She was about to push it when the door opened from inside. The little girl looked up at her, wiped her wet hands on her shirt, and said, "Why does your bathroom ask about colors?" Not afraid, just curious. Then she ran back to her mother. Rena didn't go in. She didn't want to poke at something that had stayed harmless that night. She went back to the gallery and helped take down frames. In the days that followed, Rena thought about why the voice pushed for a choice. Red or blue. Two basic colors, turned into symbols by the story, one for blood, one for suffocation. Maybe the point of the legend was that some questions are built to trap people. The trick isn't to find the clever answer but to step out of the frame. No paper was a way to not play. There is a separate story from a different school where a janitor made a habit of leaving extra paper outside the stalls. The janitor, hearing students talk, placed a small basket on a shelf with a sign, "Take what you need." The rumor softened. Students said the voice grew quieter. Some nights, it did not speak at all. When it did, the students would pick a sheet from the basket and leave. The legend didn't end. It changed shape. It turned into something people could live with. Back at Rena's school, the art term ended. Exams came. Summer approached. The bathrooms were scrubbed and re-scrubbed. Signs went up about conserving water. The building felt lighter in the heat. Legends tend to fade a bit when windows are open and fans hum and sandals slap on floors. But the top floor bathroom stayed special in the mental map of students who knew the story. They would still remind first years not to linger there at night. If someone had to go alone, a friend would wait by the door. Not because anything terrible had happened, but because it felt better to be a person standing nearby just in case. That's a useful lesson, too. Some problems are easier when someone waits outside. As for Ken, he avoided jokes about it after that one thin-voiced day. He said he didn't like the feeling of the air leaving his lungs without his consent. He didn't have proof anything supernatural occurred. He just decided that if a voice demanded a color in a place with tiles and echoes, silence was fine, and leaving was fine, and laughing could wait until he was somewhere with windows. Marie, who had listened more than she spoke, wrote a short note about the school's legends for her family back home. She described the rules clearly. If a voice in an empty bathroom insists on a choice that makes no sense, you don't owe it an answer. You can decline and go. She wrote it like a practical travel tip. Her grandmother replied with a similar story from a different country about a crossroads where a stranger offers directions that lead in circles unless you refuse and keep walking on your own. Rena, who had started this path by taking the closest restroom, thought about how many legends try to turn everyday places into traps. Classrooms after dark, stairwells with missing steps, mirrors that do not line up, and bathrooms with echoes. The answer wasn't to fear those places forever. The answer was to keep a clear head and to bring a friend when possible. She found that rule made many things easier, not just the top floor bathroom. If there is a pattern here that fits bedtime, it's this. Choices that arrive in the quiet of the night often pretend to be urgent. Most are not. Most can wait until morning, or be refused outright. The body knows the difference. It loosens when the right choice is to do nothing. If, on some late evening, a voice from a stall that looks empty offers two colors, both with bad ends, the calm response can be simple. I don't need any. Then leave. Wash hands if you like. Walk out, one normal step at a time. The hallway is just a hallway. The stairwell is just a stairwell. Outside, the air will feel better. The brain will put the strange moment into the box where it keeps odd things seen at night, next to reflections that look like people and shadows that moved like cats and turned out to be bags. As the eyes get heavy now, picture something plain, a row of clean sinks, a mirror with a tiny chip at the corner, a paper towel that tears just a little when pulled, a door that opens with a soft push and swings back on a hinge that barely squeaks. Nothing else in that room needs attention. If a question presses in your head like a choice you don't want to make, you can set it aside. Not every choice is yours to carry. Not every legend is yours to solve. Most of them require your participation to work. You can opt out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Hear a steady rhythm like water from a faucet turned to a thin line, then turned off. The building in the story grows quiet again. The light hum stays steady. The security guard on the first floor finishes his last loop and turns off a row of switches. The night outside is soft. The legend waits for someone else who wants to play. You do not. Let the shoulders drop. Let the jaw rest. The pillow supports the head. The blanket sits just right. If a color needs choosing in a dream, choose the third option. No paper, no game. The dream will find a new scene, a hallway, a window with a view you like, a door you lock without thinking, and a safe path home. Settle in and get comfortable. This is a slow and calm version of a well-known Japanese urban legend. The pace stays gentle, the details are clear, and nothing jumps out loud. If you feel sleepy while listening, that's fine. The story will keep moving quietly in the background. There is a legend about something that moves fast at night without legs. People call it teek teek, named after the sharp sound it makes while dragging itself along the ground. In many versions, the figure is the upper half of a person, often a girl or young woman, separated from the waist down by a train accident. The story says she appears near tracks, stations, pedestrian overpasses, and empty roads. If someone walks alone and hears a hard, quick scraping sound teek, teek, they should not stop to look. By the time the sound is recognized, the figure may already be close. The legend warns that teek teek is fast, much faster than a person expects, and that she chases until she reaches the person who heard her. What happens then depends on the telling. Some say she asks a question about where her legs went. Some say she carries a sharp tool. Others say she simply wants to be noticed, and that is enough to freeze anyone in place. That is the outline most people know. But there is a quieter version, mixed with a simple personal account. It does not try to prove anything. It is told like a careful walk home, one step at a time, with a steady mind. Think of it as standing at a late-night crossing, listening to faraway rails hum, and deciding the safest way forward. This happened in a mid-sized city with a small above-ground train line that ran through residential blocks. The line wasn't a subway, it was the kind where the train crossed regular roads at level crossings, with striped arms that came down and a bell that rang a clear pattern, ding ding ding. During the day, students used the crossing to get to school and back. At night, only a few people passed through, a night shift worker, someone walking a dog, a cyclist on a shortcut. A high school student named Maria took that route most evenings after cram class. The walk from the station to home took 15 minutes. She liked the routine: turn right at the bakery, left at the pharmacy, follow the tracks for one block where the houses were low and square, then cross when the arms were up. The air carried the smell of rice cooking and laundry detergent. The area was safe. The routine gave the brain a rest. One Wednesday, Maria finished later than usual. The teacher had kept the class for questions, and the group chat had gone long with a math problem argument that was more jokes than work. By the time she left the station, the sky was fully dark, the streetlights were on, and most shops had closed. A light drizzle had just ended. The pavement shone like it had been cleaned. Her phone showed 10:49 p.m. She followed the same path. Her shoes made a soft tap on the wet concrete. A scooter buzzed past and turned down a side street. A row of vending machines glowed like small islands in front of an apartment building. When she reached the block where the tracks ran parallel to the road, she could hear a faint vibration, the kind rails keep for a while after a train passes, almost a memory of motion. The crossing arms were up. The red lights were off. The bell was silent. Maria walked beside the fence that separated the sidewalk from the tracks. The gravel bed on the other side looked clean, with weeds cut low. A thin strip of grass ran under the fence. A cicada shell clung to one post, left over from weeks earlier. When she reached the crossing, she checked both ways out of habit, even though the arms were up and the sign said it was safe. The tracks looked empty and ordinary under the lights. She stepped onto the rubberized surface between the rails and walked across. At the halfway point, she heard a sound. It was small at first, but sharp. Not a bell. Not a car. Not a bicycle. It came in quick pairs like tap-tap, then a pause, then tap-tap again. Metal on stone, or something hard on a rough surface. Maria stopped on the far side of the crossing and looked down at her shoes, thinking maybe a stone had stuck in the tread. She moved her foot and heard nothing. She took a step and heard her normal step sound. Then, from along the tracks to her left, the quick tap-tap came again. Before the brain could label it, another pair followed, closer, teep, teep. A person walking might make a soft scuff on the gravel. This was not that. It was like something hard hitting the sleepers between rails, quickly, efficiently, covering ground fast. The sound did not wobble like someone limping. It was straight, regular, getting closer in clean intervals. Teep, teep, teep. Maria did not lean over the fence to see. She did not step back onto the crossing. She did not run yet. She listened. The sound kept its speed. It seemed to be about the height of the rails, not higher, not crunching through tall weeds. The picture in the mind formed by itself, hands and elbows grabbing and planting, a body pulling forward with practiced rhythm. The legend's name arrived, Teek Teek. The sensible part of the mind reminded her that practical things make odd sounds at night. A sign blown loose and tapping. A fallen piece of metal dragged by wind. An animal moving a discarded object. The sensible part then pointed out that the air was still, the fences were intact, and the sound matched only one thing she had ever been told about this exact place. Teek, teek, closer now. Not in a leap, but in predictable steps. Maria took 3 slow steps away from the tracks, putting the crossing behind her. The arms were still up. The lights still off. The bell still silent. On the road, a car engine hummed far away. In the distance, someone's TV laughed and then went quiet. Her heart sped up a little, but not to panic. It was the pace of a person deciding to leave a room that suddenly feels too quiet. She reached the corner and turned right, putting a low building between herself and the tracks. The sound followed, muted by the building, then present again at the next gap in the houses. Teep, teep. It kept the same speed whether she walked or paused. It did not hurry when she moved. It did not rest when she stopped. It simply covered ground at its own pace. When a person hears a repeated sound behind them, the instinct is to check, to turn and confirm. The body wants the eyes to settle the mind, but sometimes turning locks a person in place. Maria chose a different rule. Keep the eyes on the path ahead, keep moving toward lights and people, and do not allow the sound to write the story. It is only a sound until you give it a face. She walked in a straight line to a small convenience store she knew stayed open late on weekdays. The store sign glowed green and white. Through the window, she could see the clerk scanning items for a customer and a hot case with steamed buns. As she approached, the sound behind her reached the parallel side street. It did not enter the store's parking lot. It stayed to the tracks, like a train that cannot leave its rails. Teep, teep. Then it paused between beats, as if waiting for something. Maria pushed the door open. The chime rang. The air inside smelled like coffee and printer paper. It was bright without being harsh. The clerk glanced up and nodded. She nodded back. She did not run to a corner. She did not make a scene. She chose a small bottle of water from the cooler and carried it to the counter. The clerk scanned it and placed it in a bag even though it did not need one. Maria paid in exact coins. The clerk said thank you. Everything in the store was normal. Maria stood near the front window and took a sip. A gentle song played from a lottery machine. The customer at the copier made a photocopy and tapped the stack square. Outside, the road looked clean, the lights even, the store's posters taped neatly. She looked toward the tracks only with peripheral vision. The sound had stopped. It felt like whatever moved had reached a point where it would either wait or turn back. She decided to call her older brother, Kenji. He lived one stop away and sometimes drove by her area after late work. She told him simply, "I heard something weird near the crossing. Can you swing by?" He said yes in a steady voice and said he'd be there in 10 minutes. She thanked him and put the phone away. 10 minutes is a short time in a bright store with 2 people and a chime. While she waited, an older man came in for a newspaper and tea. He had a calm face that looked like it had seen many night shifts. He noticed Maria glancing toward the window more than toward the shelves. "You okay?" he asked in an even tone, not nosy. Maria said, "I thought I heard something on the tracks. Not a train. Like metal tapping fast." The man nodded once. "Sometimes the rails sing after a train. Sometimes kids drag things. Sometimes it's just the wind playing with a sign." He paused. "If it sounded like quick steps, don't walk alone by the fence. Go with someone. Or cut around by the police box. The officers don't mind." He spoke the way older people do when giving simple advice without turning it into a story. Kenji arrived in 8 minutes. Maria waved. He walked in, looked her over like big brothers do, and said, "You look fine." She rolled her eyes and smiled. They left together. He did not mock the situation. He asked, "Want to circle the block the long way?" She said yes. They took the road that kept houses between them and the tracks. No sound followed. At her building, he waited at the entrance while she keyed in, then left after a second wave. Upstairs, she locked the door, washed her face, and took a long breath that felt like putting something heavy down. That should be the end of the personal part, but a few days later the story picked up again in a small, practical way. On Saturday morning, Maria walked to the crossing in daylight. Children were riding scooters on the sidewalk. A woman pushed a stroller and waved to someone across the street. The striped arms went down, the bell rang, the train passed, the bell stopped, the arms rose, and life continued. Maria stood near the fence and looked at the gravel bed. There were fresh marks in the stones, lines where something hard had scraped a straight path between the rails. They were not deep, but they were too regular to be random. She did not lean in. She did not take photos. She simply noticed. The marks ran along the length of the fence, then faded where grass had grown thicker. She walked to the small police box nearby and spoke to the officer inside. She kept the tone light. "On Wednesday, I heard a fast tapping by the crossing late at night. I didn't see anything. Just thought I should mention it in case there's a loose piece of metal or something." The officer nodded. "We can ask the railway to inspect," he said. He wrote down the time and place on a small pad. "Thanks for letting us know." He did not ask for a description of a ghost. He did not roll his eyes. He did the job on paper, which is often the best way to handle strange things, log them and check the physical stuff first. On Monday, 2 railway workers in orange vests walked the length of the tracks by that block. They checked bolts and clips, looked under the crossing surface, and tested the arm mechanism. They used flashlights even in daylight to check angles under the platform. Maria saw them while walking home and felt better. People were paying attention to the place where a sound had come from. Whether or not the sound had a normal source, the human response was normal. Inspect, tighten, maintain. After that, the sound did not return for a while. The crossing worked like always. Maria returned to her routine. But because brains hold on to unusual things, she kept a small rule. When walking alone at night near the tracks, keep to the side of the street farthest from the fence, cross only when the arms are up, and, if a sound starts that does not match anything normal, head to a bright place with people. These rules do not fight a legend. They simply keep a person safe in all situations. Months later, on a windy night, Maria's friend Mai said she heard the same quick tapping near the overpass by a different station. Teep, teep. Mai ran, got to a bus stop with 3 people. and stayed there until a bus came even though it went the wrong direction. She told the story at lunch the next day in a half-joking way, trying to make a creepy thing small. 2 other students added their own small pieces, a scraping heard by the river path, a thin figure seen moving fast on camera in a video that turned out to be a raccoon dragging something. None of it proved anything. All of it trained everyone to pay attention at night. There are many ideas about Teke Teke. Some say she is the restless part of someone who died on the tracks, moving in the only way left. Some say the sound shows up when people are too close to danger, like a warning that takes a shape your culture understands. Some say the mind puts a name on any repeated noise at night to stop itself from spiraling, even if the name belongs to a ghost. For bedtime, it helps to make a small plan the brain can hold without stress. If out late near tracks or empty roads, walk on the side with more light, look both ways before crossing, keep earbuds volume low, and choose a route with open stores or a police box. If an odd sound starts, do not freeze in the middle of a crossing, move steadily to a safe, bright spot. Call someone who can talk while you walk. These steps build a pathway through the night that does not require any argument about what the sound is. Some versions of the legend say Teke Teke asks a question, "Where are my legs?" People share different answers that they think help, like pointing to the train yard or saying, "On the my shin line," or even turning the question back. None of these are proven. The safest answer to any question asked from the dark is to keep moving toward help. The world is full of questions that do not need answers at that moment. Here is a small, ordinary image to replace the sound as you get ready to sleep. Picture a crossing on a clear morning. The striped arms are up. The rails are quiet. A worker in an orange vest kneels to check a bolt with a wrench and nods, satisfied. A dog on a leash sniffs the grass by the fence and finds nothing. A kid on a scooter waits for a parent's hand before crossing and then goes, small wheels clicking, safe and bored. A train passes at the right time, people reading or staring at their phones, and then it's gone, leaving only a faint warm smell and air that feels like it was stirred and then settled again. These are the true daily shapes of a place like this. If, after the lights are off, the mind replays the sound Teke Teke, let it be the sound of something harmless. A piece of wire found by a worker and tossed in a bin, a loose sign finally tightened, a small branch dragged by wind and then swept away. Let the legend step back into the file where your brain keeps stories. Stories teach caution. They do not get to run the night. And if a small part of you still listens for that rhythm on the edge of sleep, give yourself a final rule that covers every version. Your feet are not near any rails now. Your room is still. Your breathing is steady. The only movement here is the rise and fall of your chest and the slow turn of your thoughts toward rest. Nothing is approaching. Nothing is dragging itself closer. The space under your window is just the floor. The hallway outside your door is quiet and harmless. Take one more breath in, slow. Let it out even slower. Feel the bed support your weight. Notice how the pillow fits the head. The story will keep watch for a while and then fade out like rail vibration after a train, present, then less, then gone.